It's the How Games Make Money podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Grubb from games+podcast. This is the show where I talk to people working in and around games and ask them, how does this business work? I took July 4th off because that's how this business works for me anyhow. I'm going to take some time off when it happens. But we're back with another new episode. I have a conversation with Stuart Morton, who is the publishing director of indie publisher The Irregular Corporation. This publisher focuses on producing simulation and tycoon-style games. That includes PC Building Simulator and Balsa Model Flight Sim from some of the creators of Kerbal Space Program. Morton and I talk about how important it is to find a game that is easy to share as a GIF on Twitter. He also provides thoughts on the difficulties of working within the tools that platforms like Steam and the Nintendo eShop provide. We'll get to all of that and more, but first, thank you for listening. You can get more from me at gamesbeat.com. Email the podcast at jeff.grubb@gmail.com with the subject line, How Games Make Money. Or reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Grubb. The podcast is at HGMM Show. Okay, let's get to the episode. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks to Morton for joining me, and let's do this. All right, let's do this. Joining me now is Stuart Morton.
Hey, everyone.
All right, so Stuart, you're from the Irregular Corporation. Why don't we just start right from the beginning? How does the Irregular Corporation work as a business?
Yeah, so the Irregular Corporation is a traditional indie publisher. So we are kind of set up to help developers basically improve their games and bring them to market to as many people as possible, basically, using our expertise in both development and publishing to achieve that.
Traditional indie publishing, this is a space that seems like it's getting more and more crowded. Are you guys feeling that? Is that something that you guys think about, or is it mostly just, business as usual for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we think about. I mean, there is definitely a lot more competition now on the publishing side, but I think we're still in a position where there are more games than there are publishers, so it doesn't really impact us too much. And the Irregular Corporation has a fairly tight focus on the type of games that we ultimately publish. We kind of focus around kind of simulation, tycoon management strategy games as kind of a core focus for us. So that helps us, kind of really kind of laser in on exactly what we're interested in. And there's plenty of games to go around ultimately.
Do you think it's important that you guys have that tight focus?
Yeah, I think it is. We're in the business of trying to, as a publisher, trying to build kind of long-term partnerships with developers around, these genres that are traditionally kind of longer term. These are the kind of games that people play for 10, 20, 100, thousands of hours in some cases. So for us, by focusing on that, it gives us a lot of opportunity to help kind of cross-promote between those genres quite nicely. So I think it's always good to have a focus for many reasons. That means our fans know what we're about and what kind of games to expect from us, and it helps us kind of build a core audience that loves what we do.
Yeah, is there like a scene around the kinds of games you guys are releasing, both on the development side and the fan side?
Yeah, I think there is on both. Probably no more than there are on other games, but there's a lot of passion around the kind of genres that we work within. Simulation in particular. People that make simulation games often really, really love whatever the subject matter is for that game, and there's kind of really big, even communities outside of games that love that. PC Building Simulator is a great example of that, right? It's everyone that has a PC that loves playing PC games. Well, not everyone, but a vast majority of those people probably built their own PC or are very interested in PCs in general on the hardware side of it. So when you make a game about that, you capture both the game side of it and the hardware enthusiast side of it, which makes it much appealing for two completely different audiences.
So with like PC Building Simulator, it seems like it was one of the breakout successes for you all. Tell me about that. What was the process of like getting that game signed and then putting it out there and then finding an audience for it?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I don't think it has been a great success and continues to be so. I don't think we ever really kind of knew when it launched quite how big of a success it would be. I mean, when you tell someone you're making a game about building PCs, the first reaction to most people is to laugh, because I think you're just making kind of a wacky simulation game that we are throwing PC parts into a case or something, and it's just good for a laugh. But when you actually, when we we worked quite hard to make sure it was as kind of authentic as possible to kind of get away from that and try and make it, I guess, partly educational as well, where we can, within the confines of a game. So when we first came across it, there was a very early kind of prototype demo out on the internet that we came across as a publisher. So we reached out to the developer to see if they wanted some support, the kind of usual publisher story on that front. They did, thankfully, and then we began to work closely with them to kind of develop it into a full-fledged game that we see today, ultimately. And, we worked very closely with hardware manufacturers to make sure, to get them on board. So we've got all fully licensed parts, and that kind of helped build into, the success that it had when it launched into early access a couple of years ago. And it's just continued to grow and grow and grow from that point onwards, which is obviously great. We're starting to see, particularly in the current climate, like a lot of educational establishments come to us and, wanting to use it, to help teach people how to build PCs when they can't get people in the classroom, etc. at the moment.
I knew PC Building Simulator, but I didn't know about PC Building Simulator Education Edition. Has that been something that kind of just like sprung out of a need that you and the developer didn't even know about?
Yeah, I mean, we fairly quickly after we launched it started getting almost daily requests from schools to, this is great. It's really hard for us to get actual hardware in the classroom and get people to build PCs, keeping hardware, working in a classroom sounds like it's quite a hard task. So they immediately saw it as a great way of being able to get it on front of a PC and get people learning how to build PCs easily. So yeah, we were, we wanted to support it as much as we could from early on. Obviously, it was there's a lot of work in getting a version that you can get together and into schools that can't use Steam, etc. So there's some restrictions we had to work around, but we've been slowly building on that over the last couple of years, and now we do have a system in place that we can help get these copies into people directly via our website, into schools, and that is something that we've been kind of trying to focus on, especially this year, just to try and grow that as much as possible and get it into as many schools as we can, because it's a amazingly interesting area for games. I think more games you can get into classrooms to help teach people, children in particular, I think is definitely worth pursuing.
Well, for like something like PC Building Simulator, you talked about getting license agreements with the actual PC component manufacturers. What is that? What are those conversations like? Are those like really complicated deals to put together, or are most companies like, yeah, this sounds like fun?
A mixture of all of them. Some are easier than others, but sometimes they can take months and months. I think it took best part of a year in a couple of cases. I won't name them, but they are long. It's a legal process at the end of the day with licensing. So sometimes it can take a long time. But I think process can take a long time, but the kind of selling them on why they should be involved in the game is a fairly straightforward one. It's immediately obvious to hardware manufacturers why it's good for them to be in a game like PC Building Simulator, because it gets their hardware in front of the people that are going to be buying it, basically. When
I think about it, and I think like it could get complicated, I'm like, oh, is it even worth it? But I mean, when it ends up in the game, it must be worth it. It does add a certain something to the game overall. Is that what you found?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we probably didn't know right at the beginning if it would. We believed that it would make a massive difference. We didn't think anyone would want a game about PC building that just had made up part names in it. That seemed like a shame if we had to go down that route. We were prepared to do it if we couldn't get the licensing deals in place. But thankfully, through a lot of hard work and persistence, we managed to get enough of the kind of major manufacturers together for our early access launch, and it's just continued to grow from that point onwards. And I think players love it, but it's a double-edged sword. You try and get as many parts in as you can, but there's always hundreds more requests for people to add their favorite part, because everyone has their favorite manufacturer and parts, and they all want to build their exact home PC, for example. So if they're missing one bit, then it's like, that must be the next bit you add to the game.
So how are you finding these games now? I guess, you know what? Tell me how you found games before the world changed with COVID-19, and how has it changed since?
I don't think it's changed hugely for us, thankfully. The Irregular Corporation as a company, we were already a completely remote-based company before this all started. So it's business as usual for us on that point, without the exception of going to shows and speaking to developers in person. We're kind of well set up to have remote-based meetings with people all the time. So thankfully it was kind of low impact on the business front for us, the whole COVID situation, which is great. So it hasn't changed a huge amount. We have people actively, scouring the internet, looking for potential interesting new titles for us to kind of reach out and see if, they might be interested in publishing support. And, people come to us still. Now, we've had a few releases out and it's becoming more of a known publisher in this space, and we're getting more people come to us and asking for help, which is, great to see our reputation is starting to spread.
Yeah, is that something you've found more where people are like, hey, I am making a simulation game, and when I go to look for simulation games, this publisher keeps coming up. That has started to snowball for you? Yeah,
I think it has, and I think that's exactly what we wanted. That's one of the key. Again, going back to what our focus is as a publisher, the benefits from that is that you begin to get known for kind of quality games in those spaces. So it's good to see that starting to pay off already.
So, I think your title is publishing director, I think. And what does that job entail? Like, what is your day to day?
Yeah, as a publishing director, what it entails day to day is can vary very much from day to day. But ultimately, I'm kind of responsible for looking after kind of our whole catalogue of games that we're publishing, kind of end to end. So, I get involved in the beginning processes of, looking at what titles we're going to sign. Sometimes that means we get involved, speaking to developers directly to help kind of negotiate, that deal with them to kind of get them to work with us. And then kind of more kind of regular day to day is kind of looking after the team of producers on the Irregular Corporation's end, who are responsible for kind of managing each of the games and developers day to day, and kind of overseeing the publishing side of the business as a whole, which extends into everything from sticking my nose into, marketing and production and every kind of aspect that the company is involved in.
So where the company is at today, where do you hope to grow the publishing business in the future? Is it about, more and bigger games? Is it about spreading to new platforms? What's the plan?
Yeah, a bit of all of those. I think, we obviously want more games, but we're not looking for too many games, if that makes sense. We're trying to focus on quality over quantity where at all possible. So, we strongly believe that the kind of service that we offer developers, us being from a development background ourselves, that we want to get kind of as hands-on as developers allow us to help shape, help make that game as good as possible. So it means we can't take on loads and loads of games because we can't. We want to make sure we're giving the right time to all of those titles. So we'll be expanding to more platforms. We already had PC Building Simulator was released on console last year. We'll have more of our games over the console platforms over the coming years for sure. We're not going to be PC only in the future for sure. We will be interested in publishing games on any of the new platforms that are coming out as well.
So when you are looking for a game, what is it that you're looking for? Are you guys, is it about like, something that looks really good in a GIF? Is it something with a standout art style? Can it be something that looks plain but like has just an amazing gameplay hook? What are you looking for?
I mean, an interesting GIF is always a good start for sure. Funnily enough, a lot of the time, spending a lot of time on places like Twitter myself, an interesting GIF is one of the main things that will catch my eye and start me off on the trail of kind of digging into what the game is to see if it might be of interest to us. So that is one of the biggest points for me when I'm looking, to keep my eyes out for potential new games for sure. But it is a mixture of things. I think for us, there's a lot of value in games that almost have extra interest outside of the pure games. So as I said before, games that, things like PC building or flight simulation and things like that. Those kinds of games that have a real world application or hobby attached to them are really interesting to us as a publisher. That's where we can really see kind of a good coverage of users outside, in games and outside of games that we can hopefully reach with those titles. So any games that have that kind of capacity are of particular interest to us. Outside of that, it's strange what can catch your eye, really, and what kicks you off and down the path of finding a game that you ultimately end up publishing. Interesting GIFs, videos, always a good place to start. I think if you've got that and you can see people getting excited by it on social media, then that's, I think you've already got a really great idea of if that game has got any kind of potential.
Once you bring a game in, and even when you're having that conversation with a developer and saying, "Hey, we would like you to come be part of our publishing efforts here," what is that conversation like? What are you saying to developers that you can provide to them that they might need?
Yeah, as much. The pitch, so to speak, is very much kind of as much or as little help as they ultimately want. Every developer wants something different from a publisher. Some just want some money to help them finish the game. Most of them want marketing support. That is kind of the number one thing that most developers want a publisher for, which is fair enough. There's elements of what we do as a publisher that developers might not know they need until much later on in the project's life cycle. But, we have a wealth of kind of development experience as a company. Most of the team have been, either making or publishing games for over 10 years each of us. So there's a lot of experience that we can help leverage if developers want it, to help them in all areas from, production level support, managing their schedules and how helping organize their tasks to make sure that they can keep everything on schedule, for design support if they have particularly difficult issues to try and resolve and balancing their game, or design queries, to obviously marketing support and community support as well, and kind of helping their community and really helping them kind of take the load off. Ultimately, a lot of the time indie developer teams are quite small. Sometimes they're only one person. So having some extra pair of hands on the publishing side to help look after the community, take the load off on the marketing side, even help out a little bit on the development side, is a huge benefit to a lot of these smaller teams.
Ultimately, where does the money end up coming from? Is it that you guys take a cut of the sales that come from platforms?
Yeah, it's as simple as that. No, it's fairly standard kind of publishing model. I don't think has really changed through the ages. But once the game has been on sale and is hopefully making everyone loads of money, then there is a split of some kind from. Generally, once, and this is fairly normal, but a lot for most publishers, once the publisher has kind of recouped their costs for getting the game to market, then kind of a royalty share will be a kick in, where for every sale, publisher gets X amount, developer gets the remaining amount.
How are you feeling about the current, slate of platforms that are available? Between Steam and Epic Games, and then the console manufacturers, mobile. How is the Irregular Corporation feeling about those things as services?
Yeah, great. We are kind of PC kind of first at the moment for a lot of our titles, and then we look at placing those games onto other platforms as in kind of whatever we think fits best for those games. And it's an exciting time in general. Next generation console launches are always an exciting time in the games industry. So we're keeping a very close eye on Xbox Series X and PS5 developments to see what makes sense for us to move certain games to those platforms in the future. And Stadia, of course, is an interesting platform for many reasons at the moment. So we're keeping a very close eye on what's happening there.
Do you ever find yourself, when you're trying to win over a developer and say, "Hey, come to us," that you are competing with other publishers?
Yeah, more often than not. I think unless you can, it's fairly rare, unless you can get in front of a developer really early on. You're the first person to find that game and get in touch with the developer, more often than not, there's usually a few people that are chasing them, especially if they've got good traction online. Again, going back to the fancy GIFs that might be on Twitter, if it's a good chance that more than one person has seen that. There's a lot of publishers around now. So more often than not, there will be, quite a few people that are chasing that game. So we have to pitch quite hard what we do and what we can offer them in the hopes to win them around.
Is the conversation there often like, hey, we have some experience in your exact type of game? Is that how you guys try to set yourself apart?
Yeah, it is. Having a catalogue of titles that kind of work quite nicely with the game that they're making is useful. I think a more important part of that is just the people that work for the company. I think, a lot of the time developers, they get a good sense of, basically the type of people that they're potentially working with. So I think if they get along with those people and believe they can trust in them and what they do, then I think that's generally how you kind of win them over. Ultimately, how you treat them and what kind of feeling they get off you is often a big part of what will sway them outside of, we're going to give you more money than the other person might do.
Do you feel like you have to be up on all of the latest marketing tricks for like each individual platform? Whatever it takes to get ahead on Steam, whatever that is. I feel like no one really knows. And then, or like on the eShop, where like a lot of developers have started doing the thing where they drop the game down to 10 cents for like a week, and then it moves up the charts, and then they move the price back up, and it seems to like make up for it in the end. Which I know you guys don't have a ton of stuff on console, but you think you have one or two games maybe on eShop. Is that stuff that you guys actively think about?
I mean, we are aware of it, as I'm sure everyone are. We keep a close eye on, the things that various people are doing to try and get ahead in those markets. I think there's a limit to what we would do. Dropping the price of a game down to, next to nothing just to get up the charts, I don't think is beneficial really to the game that you're doing it with.
Right. For
the sake of making, a few extra bucks, essentially. It's just to get out the charts. It's not something that hugely appeals to us. And our developers as well, unless a developer really feels strongly about doing something like that, then we might consider it. But generally we like to, I guess, play by the rules seems like the wrong way of explaining it. But, there are, try and keep playing by the rules. Let's just call it that, I guess.
The reason I bring it up is, at first you see a lot of really smaller teams doing it with games that I didn't recognize. And then more recently, I've seen more and more games where I'm like, I know that game. And now that's, it's selling for 99 cents on there. And, normally it's like a $20 game or whatever. And so it just seems like the kind of thing where it's like more and more people are trying it because it's like it is the thing that works.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, it depends. What time that kind of during the product's the game's life cycle really it makes sense, right? If it's been out a year or 18 months or even 2 years, then doing that isn't really much of a risk to it. But I think there's a strong value proposition around games where we haven't dropped. A good example of this is PC Building Simulator has been out for just over 2 years now, for early access and post launch over the last year, and we haven't discounted that game above 33% in 2 years, and that has paid off hugely. There's a kind of, it's not, people don't see it and go, oh yeah, that's that £3 game. Like that's always on sale for next to nothing. So is it even worth getting? I think if you're seen to not drop the prices and just sell it for nothing just to get people to buy it, then I think there's huge value in that. And games should get, people should make the money off the games that they've kind of sweated for and put blood into, kind of thing. There's no reason to race down to a low price just to sell a few more copies of the game. I don't think there's other ways of increasing sales of your game that will have a much larger benefit to it in the long term. There's marketing efforts you can do. You can paid advertising, etc., things like that are cost effective to do to get good sales without the need to kind of just slash the price just to get as many copies sold as you can.
Right. And, when I think about it, it's like, okay, the eShop doesn't have a lot of great ways to find games that aren't on like one of the featured slots. And I wonder, like, the reason you don't see this on something like Steam is because maybe a lot of those things where it's like, oh, the algorithm's going to put this game in front of a lot of people, even if the game has been out for 2 years, which is not, almost that doesn't happen on the eShop, but it could happen on Steam. Are those tools that, Valve has built for Steam working then? Because it's like still putting PC Building Simulator out in front of people that might still be interested?
Yeah, I mean, who knows how the algorithm really works on
right.
Steam? Like, it's a bit of a kind of mystery box of things that are going on behind the scenes. But, it comes down to, I guess, a few key things. Having lots of people, like your game. So, people are buying it, leaving good reviews. The amount of people doing that will help surface the game more, obviously, on Steam. So, and that all comes down to how you manage that game and how you perceive it to players. And I said, keeping it value. We regularly update it with free content all the time, so it's continually being updated for free. So people getting extra parts and things like that in the game. So all that kind of builds into a much longer tail kind of success for the game, which I think it's not possible for every game, for sure, but particularly the type of games that we work on as a publisher, that it's much easier for us to do that and build these games into kind of much longer term games for people to enjoy for as long as possible. And I think you kind of have to work with the tools that you've got on these platforms, as you say.
Right.
The eShop has a limit to what you can do and how you can get your game in front of people. So unless you've got good contacts at platform holders, which we do, which is great. So we have some ability to chat to Nintendo or chat to Microsoft or Sony and talk to them about how we can promote titles that we are publishing in a better way. Sometimes the only tool you have, if you're an indie developer that's kind of self-publishing, is to get your game seen, is to go down those routes. And I don't begrudge anyone for using the tools available at their disposal for this kind of thing at all.
Well, Stuart, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Cool. Well, yeah, once again, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. A really good episode this week. We'll be back with another one next week. Until then, have a good one and goodbye.